President Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin now both on the ground in Helsinki, Finland, for this morning's historic summit. Here now is Bill Richardson. He is former ambassador to the UN, former New Mexico governor, and former Democratic presidential candidate himself. Governor, good to see you. Thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you, Maria.
Your thoughts on what the president should bring up with Vladimir Putin?
Well, I hope he goes on the offensive on the 12 indicted Russian hackers. Try to get them extradited. It's probably not going to happen. Don't interfere in our elections. Make a commitment that you never will. The annexation of Crimea, unacceptable. Find a political solution in Syria that moves Assad out. On the positive side, maybe an arms control agreement that restarts the arms control START talks.
Right.
We've got 5,000 nuclear weapons pointed at each other. I just want the president to be tough with Putin, not to think of him as his buddy.
And here's the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, Devin Nunes, joining me yesterday, says that President Trump has done more to confront foreign policy issues than anybody. Watch this.
I laugh about all these people who are saying that Trump shouldn't meet with Putin. Trump has done more on the highest issues at the most important level, pointing them out to the Europeans and the American people, that you've got to stop buying gas from Russians and you have to beef up defense in Poland, Romania, and the Baltics. That's what needs to happen, and only by force, brute force, will Putin understand anything. And we should give the president the room to do that.
Do you expect that to come up, Ambassador?
Well, I think on the issue of energy, I was hearing Steve Forbes. He's absolutely right. We have to approve in our own bureaucracy, in FERC, the Department of Energy, more LNG terminals if we want to sell natural gas and energy to Europe, to Germany. Germany has no choice. That's why they made the deal with the Russians on natural gas, because we have not approved LNG terminals as fast as we should. Under Obama, I think there were 7. I think that was a positive start, but there's still a lot of snags in the bureaucracy. I agree that the president should meet with Putin. I don't have a problem with that. I just want him to be very, very strong. Now, the problem is our bureaucracy is strong against Russia. Intelligence agencies, the Congress, his own cabinet. But then the president seems to okay, my pal is Putin. We're going to make things work well. That's a big, big, different cross current that is existing right now.
Here's Steve Forbes.
Good to see you, Governor. Ambassador Steve Forbes here. On the Europeans, on the gas, why haven't they done very much in approving local LNG facilities to take the gas in? They talk about it. Nothing has happened. They still fear the Russians. We're in this conundrum. They fear the Russians, but they won't move to take the alternatives. The real bottleneck is in Europe, not the U.S. right now, isn't it?
Well, there is a bottleneck in Europe, Steve. I think what you're seeing is a shift all over Europe away from coal, away from nuclear, to renewable energy, to natural gas. But they have their own bureaucracy problems. You're absolutely right. But, Steve, we should approve LNG terminals.
Absolutely.
I think you'll agree with me. More faster than we have. I mean, the president issued an executive order. That's fine. But it still takes these agencies forever. I was Secretary of Energy. It takes, FERC and these other regulatory entities a long time to just deal with the paperwork and do the approvals.
One reason that the president has been rolling back regulations, and that has been one of his priorities of economic policy. Governor, we just want to point out that President Putin has now arrived at the presidential palace to meet with President Trump. The president tweeted ahead of this meeting this morning with Putin. He said this: President Obama thought that crooked Hillary was going to win the election. So when he was informed by the FBI about Russian meddling, he said it couldn't happen. It was no big deal and did nothing about it. When I won, it became a big deal, and the rigged witch hunt headed by Strzok. What do you say about that?
Well, I think the president should stop blaming President Obama, Hillary Clinton, and focus on saying to President Putin, you cannot interfere in our elections again. I want a commitment. And ask for the 12 Russians to be extradited. Now, it's not going to happen, but it's a matter of tone.
Yeah.
I think if the summit is just one of there's no friction, then Putin wins because he gets acceptance on Crimea, on Syria, on the election meddling, and that shouldn't happen.
So just to be clear, just to be clear, do you think you are happy he's having this meeting? Because a lot of people on the left are demanding that President Trump not meet with President Putin.
Well, I was okay with a meeting until the 12 indictments. I'm okay with it happening.
But the 12
I think that we should meet adversaries.
I mean, honestly, we knew about what Russia was doing for a while, and we certainly knew specifically about these 12 individuals a year and a half ago when Devin Nunes and the Intel Committee came out with its report. Yesterday, I spoke with Congressman John Ratcliffe, who also responded to these demands for not meeting with Putin. Listen to this. Got to get your reaction.
The real reason that Senator Schumer and other Democrats don't want Donald Trump to sit down with Vladimir Putin tomorrow is the same reason they didn't want Donald Trump to sit down with Kim Jong-un last month. They're afraid he'll succeed. So now I think the Democrats are deathly afraid of Donald Trump sitting down with Vladimir Putin and kicking holes in all of the things that they've been saying about him being a puppet of Putin and the Kremlin.
There you go. What's your take on that?
Well, that's excessive. You know, that's out of control. I think, look, it's important that they meet.
Yeah.
Now, I would hope that in the one-on-one meeting that the president is firm. I mean, in fact, I felt that it was good that he had Secretary Pompeo, John Huntsman, our ambassador. They're strong people to be there. What I don't want is the president to make concessions on sanctions, on NATO exercises. You know, Putin's going to want some of those NATO exercises to cease, and I worry about the president. I think the summit with Kim Jong-un was a positive step, but at the same time, I did not like that concession on allowing exercises between the United States and South Korea to be canceled. Don't give anything up. Be strong.
Mr. Ambassador, Mary Kissel here. I seem to recall that you were a big fan of appeasement with North Korea in prior administrations. That didn't turn out very well. What lessons have you learned from that experience, and how do you apply that to this meeting with Putin?
Well, I never was for appeasement. What I did with North Korea was get American soldiers out, get American prisoners out. Look, I think the summit with Kim Jong-un was the right step because negotiating with North Korea from the bottom up didn't work. I admit that. So you take a gamble with the president going from the top to the bottom. I think tensions have lessened, Mary. But look at the results. The North Koreans have not done anything to curb their nuclear weapons. Even on the remains of our soldiers from the Korean War, they're just promoting meetings. Nothing has really happened yet. So what I want, and then we made that concession on military exercises with South Korea. I just want some meat on the bone, some results from these summits, not just bland statements.
All right, we will leave it there. Governor, good to see you this morning. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate your insights. Bill Richardson there.